Stay tuned for another News Center 88 presentation on WMUL-FM Huntington. Now, the News Center 88 Weekend Recap, covering the top stories around the globe, tri-state, and across the campus of Marshall University. And now, the News Center 88 Weekend Recap team.
Welcome to this edition of News Center 88's Weekend Recap. I'm Luke Hamilton.
And I'm Waylon Smith. Coming up on this edition of Weekend Recap, Beer for My Horses singer and songwriter Toby Keith has died at age 62. Emma Johnson will be in with this week's weather forecast, and John Boggess will be in with a recap of the week that was in Marshall athletics.
Now on to our top story. Prince Harry flew more than 5,000 miles to see his father after King Charles III was diagnosed with cancer, but he did not see his estranged brother, William, during a visit that lasted about 24 hours. British media published photos of Harry at Heathrow Airport on Wednesday afternoon, just a day after he arrived in the same airport on a flight from Los Angeles. William, meanwhile, returned to public duties for the first time since his wife, Kate, was admitted to a London hospital on January 16th for abdominal surgery. There was no easy reconciliation between the two royal brothers, whose paths have diverged dramatically.
An American porn actor who has advocated for Palestinians online during Israel's war on Hamas traveled to Iran and visited the former U.S. Embassy in Tehran. The visit by Whitney Wright has drawn no attention from Iran's tightly controlled media, but has sparked heated criticism over the country's crackdown on women since the 2020 death in police custody of Masha Amini and the nationwide protests it sparked. Wright filmed herself throughout Tehran despite her work in pornography, exposing her in theory to criminal charges that carry the death penalty. The U.S. Embassy was abandoned after the 1979 hostage crisis, and Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard now runs it as a museum.
Country music singer-songwriter Toby Keith, whose pro-American anthems were both beloved and criticized, has died. He was 62. A statement posted on his website says Keith died peacefully Monday, surrounded by his family. He had stomach cancer. The statement says, quote, "He fought his fight with grace and courage," unquote. He announced his cancer diagnosis in 2022. Keith broke out in the country boom years of the 1990s, crafting an identity around his macho swagger and writing songs that fans loved to hear. His hits included How Do You Like Me Now, Should Have Been a Cowboy, and Beer for My Horses, a duet with Willie Nelson. Another notable accomplishment from Keith was his 2015 induction into the Songwriters Hall of Fame.
I started as songwriter, and there's a Nashville Songwriter Hall of Fame. There's all kinds. This is the big one, and be recognized while you're alive, and when you can enjoy it with your family. And this is the only one I care about. I don't do award shows very often.
Coming up, a West Virginia Women's Bill of Rights is an effort to suppress transgender people, critics say. Stay with us for a recap of news across the tri-state when we return.
So what does WMUL mean by the cutting edge? Well, not this, but this.
Marshall University students say it's not easy being Greek.
Nope, not this either. Whew. But this? Oh yeah. And finally, 0% this, but 100% this.
Got it! Touchdown! Thundering Herd!
So the cutting edge means award-winning news, music, and sports. Not, cutting stuff. 88.1 WMUL.
Welcome back to News Center 88's Weekend Recap. I'm Luke Hamilton.
And I'm Waylon Smith. Marshall University students, staff, and leaders travel to the West Virginia State Capitol to not only showcase achievements, but also to voice the needs of the university.
Students and staff representing Marshall University and various organizations on campus met with state representatives and leaders to showcase all that Marshall has to offer. Various achievements were recognized and future plans were discussed. President of Alumni Relations Matt James says it's important to display Marshall's accomplishments, but that's not the only goal of the visit.
It's also really important when our president is here to talk about our priorities. Many of those things cost money, and it takes support from the state. And so I could give you a list of reasons, but really we just need to be present. We need to start building those relationships with our lawmakers.
By advocating for positive changes, University President Brad Smith has 6 areas of emphasis that include cybersecurity, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, new energy, aviation, and entrepreneurship that would benefit the university.
So as we sit with the legislature, we're trying to ensure that we continue to support the performance-based funding formula we put in place. which rewards higher education with funding for doing the right things that will help the state and help the students. We're also working with them on solutions for PEIA, which is the insurance program that supports our employees and our institution.
Now that the new Brad D. Smith School of Business is open, Smith's next goal includes breaking more ground.
One is help us expand our aviation program, which will also allow us to help 4 other schools in the state stand up theirs. And the other one is our Advanced Manufacturing Center. We want to put it in a new building in the Innovation District in Huntington. We need to move it out of that old building that's 60 years old and move it up closer to the cybersecurity building.
West Virginia State Delegate Sean Hornbuckle says these plans are not only a positive for the university, but also for the Huntington community.
As you can see right now, Mayor Steve Williams, Brad Smith working hand in hand, also with our legislature up here to really get a lot of things going with our cybersecurity. You saw that happen at the end of last year. That was something that came from the legislature, right? Giving a lot of resources back to the community, trying to help out that way.
Despite the big plans President Smith has for the university, Student Body President Walker Tatum also has a plan in place that would expand the food pantry at Marshall University.
My vice president and I are focusing on food insecurity on campus. We're trying to expand our food pantry and have a thrift store food pantry combined. So with that, there's actually a bill that's been introduced in the Senate and House, that's the Hunger Free Campus Act, that gives public funding to universities to address food insecurity for students.
For over 20 years, Marshall Day at the Capitol has allowed students and leaders to voice their concerns, propose positive changes, and give the university credit for all the achievements they have accomplished. For Newscenter88, I'm Emma Johnson.
Thanks, Emma. Marshall Day at the Capitol was a success for all in attendance as the university continues to move forward with plans and ideas.
Dozens of speakers have condemned a bill in the West Virginia legislature that would narrow the definitions of gender. The bill is called the West Virginia Women's Bill of Rights. Marshall University student Max Varney said the bill uses women's rights as a cover for transphobia. The legislation says that equal does not mean same or identical with respect to equality of the sexes. It would define that a person's sex is determined at birth and that gender equity terms may not be substituted. Critics say that, among other things, the bill would ban transgender people from using government building restrooms that align with their gender identity.
Coming up next, Biden angrily pushes back at special counsel's report that questioned his memory handling of dogs. Stay with us for a recap of news from around the nation when Newscenter88 returns right after this.
This song is being played on a didgeridoo. A didgeridoo is an instrument made by Indigenous Australians. WMUL doesn't have any songs with didgeridoos in them. But what we do have is the Tri-State's largest variety of music, from alternative to hip-hop, jazz to blues, and much more. Plus, our selection is constantly being updated with the latest tunes. So, maybe one day we will have a song with a didgeridoo in it. 88.1 WMUL FM.
Welcome back to the Newscenter88 Weekend Recap. I'm Luke Hamilton.
And I'm Waylon Smith. Marshall University students and faculty are expressing some concerns about the imminent arrival of guns on campus. Luke Hamilton collected reactions from Professor Chris White and Minority Leader Sean Hornbuckle.
If people think that they should carry a weapon on campus because it will make their fellow students safer, then they got another thing coming, because in order to be effective at firing back at a mass shooter, you have to be trained for that. By pushing this bill, they're implying that college campuses are already dangerous. The statistics show that school campuses, K through 16, are probably the safest places in the country.
I had an amendment last year that was going to allow each university to come up with their own guidelines how that will work. That was voted down. And then it would give the ability for the university, if they had the resources to do so, to come in and make 2/3 of their dormitories firearm free and 1/3 with firearms. And so that's a way where you can build it to suit.
Anybody, I think over 18, can carry a concealed weapon in the state of West Virginia. This bill specifically says you have to have a permit in order to carry it on publicly funded university campuses. People at the Capitol were very concerned that this meant that anybody could bring a gun on campus, but it's actually not the case.
There's nobody loves Marshall more than me. And I don't want to see, our faculty, staff, and led by President Smith have done such a good job these past 2 years of, increasing enrollment. I don't want to see it to go down. because somebody's like, yeah.
That at the very least, they could do some type of a weapons familiarization course with people. They could take maybe, even 30 minutes. 30 minutes would be enough to save someone's life. Aside from taking up a fentanyl addiction, the statistics show that the most dangerous thing you can do is to buy a handgun. And so if we look to the police and the military, we can see, so many times they have accidental discharges, and they're the most experienced people with firearms there are. Police officers sometimes commit suicide with their own handguns. Soldiers do as well. That's why I say it's incredibly dangerous for just a regular person to buy a pistol. If they think they're going to defend themselves, much more likely to hurt themselves.
Thanks, Luke. Starting July 1st, permit holders will have permission to carry a weapon in what has been a gun-free zone until now.
The special counsel released their findings today about their look into my handling of classified documents. I was pleased to see they reached the conclusion I believed and knew all along they would, that there are no charges should be brought in this case.
A special counsel report has found evidence that President Joe Biden willfully retained and shared highly classified materials when he was a private citizen, including documents about military and foreign policy in Afghanistan. The Justice Department report nonetheless says no criminal charges are warranted for Biden or anyone else. In remarks at the White House yesterday evening, Biden denied that he improperly shared classified information and angrily lashed out at special counsel Robert Hur for questioning his mental acuity. A report from Hur, released earlier yesterday, represents a harshly critical assessment of Biden's handling of sensitive government materials and includes unflattering characterizations of his memory.
Coming up, Emma Johnson will be in with this week's weather forecast. In FM88 Sports, John Boggess will be in with a recap of the week that was in Marshall Athletics.
You have a CD for any mood. You've got everything from rainy day jazz to pure existential angst. You've got CDs to dance to, boogie to, shimmy to, mosh to, and totally rock out to. You've got rock, rap, pop, alt pop, sub pop, hip hop, jazz, blues, country, metal, punk, and some stuff they don't even have a name for yet. But do you have a first aid kit? You have the things that make you happy. Get the things that make you prepared. An All Hazards Emergency Preparedness Kit can help. Ready kits are available at your local retailer. Learn more at ready.gov.
Welcome back to Newscenter88's Weekend Recap. I'm Emma Johnson, and now it is time for this week's weather forecast. After a week of decently warm and sunny weather, we can expect some rain this Saturday and Sunday. Throughout this Saturday, we saw some rain early this morning, but the rest of the day looks clear. We will also see a high of 65 degrees and a low of 46 degrees, keeping the decently warm weather streak alive. As Sunday approaches, the temperature will drop into the mid to low 40s and 50s, possibly bringing in some rain as the day progresses. This will cause us to see some of the colder weather that we experienced a few weeks ago. As we look into the upcoming week, rain is still in the cards for Monday, bringing the temperature down to the mid to low 40s, which will kickstart a small cold front. Throughout the rest of the week, we will see highs in the mid-40s and lows in the 30s with some rain showers until the end of the week. The weather word of the weekend is deformation zone. A deformation zone is an area in the atmosphere where winds converge along one axis and diverge along another. Deformation zones can also produce clouds and precipitation. Thank you, weatherology.com, for that information. And that concludes this week's weather forecast. For News Center 88, I'm Emma Johnson.
Thanks, Emma. Now John Boggess joins us with a recap of the week that was in Marshall Athletics.
Thanks, Luke. Wednesday was known nationally as Women in Sports Day, and the Marshall Thundering Herd women's basketball team was home to celebrate it. The Thundering Herd bounced back from its first conference loss of the season by defeating the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns 74-42. The Herd would not allow the Ragin' Cajuns to score a single point in the first 6 minutes of the game, going on an 11-0 run. The Herd would continue to dominate through the remainder of the first 2 quarters, holding a 19-point lead at halftime. 3 Marshall players scored double digits in the win, with Abby Beeman leading in scoring with 14 points. Sydney Scott had 11 points and Brianna Campbell had 10. Marshall's defense was strong with a team total of 15 steals, and Louisiana turned the ball over 28 times. The Herd increased its conference record to 11-1, while the Ragin' Cajuns are now 5-7. Marshall will begin a 4-game road stretch Thursday when it faces App State. The Marshall Thundering Herd men's basketball team was on the road Wednesday, traveling to Troy, Alabama to face the Troy Trojans. The Herd fell to the Trojans with a final score of 82-66. Troy dominated early, holding a 16-point lead at halftime. Marshall would match Troy's scoring in the second half, but the early lead for Troy would lead the way to its 11th straight victory at home. Troy forward Thomas Dowd led the way, recording a double-double for the second time this season and a career high in rebounds with 13. Marshall forward Nate Martin also recorded a double-double, his 12th of the season with 11 points and 11 rebounds. Marshall now has a 7-5 conference record, and Troy sits at 10-2. Marshall is on the road for its next game Thursday against App State. After competing in 3 different conferences over the past 3 seasons, the Marshall swim team has found success in its new home, the Sun Belt Conference. Members of the swim team talked about their excitement for its accomplishments. In its first season competing in the Sun Belt Conference, the Marshall swim team had 5 swimmers receive the individual honor of Sun Belt Conference Swimmer of the Week. One of the 5 is senior Audrey West, who received the honor on the week of January 18th.
It's definitely a huge honor being named the Sun Belt Swimmer of the Week. It's super exciting that we have a lot of success as a team, the first year in the conference.
West says success in the regular season gives the team momentum heading into the postseason. Senior Madeline Hart, who received the honor in November, agrees with West that the accomplishments are beneficial to the overall success of the program.
I think they speak a lot on our accomplishments as a team and how we're just building our program to be able to get these specific awards.
In addition to the Sun Belt Swimmer of the Week honors, the team has also broken several personal and school records this season. Hart recently broke 2 personal times in the final regular season meet against Toledo.
Well, I did those times not tapered or rested, and so that just gives me a lot of confidence going forward, knowing that I still have time to drop.
Senior Esther Laban, freshman Molly Warner, and senior Paige Banton have received the Sun Belt Swimmer of the Week alongside West and Hart. Banton also set the program record in the 200 breaststroke at the recent meet. The team finds it important to celebrate the personal accomplishments together.
We definitely all just hype each other up on Instagram stories. We'll say silly captions. It's fun to get fun texts from friends, or we just make memes and send them to each other.
Now that the regular season is finished, Marshall will have the opportunity to achieve the ultimate goal, a conference championship, when it competes in the Sun Belt Championships beginning on February 14th. In Marshall's first Sun Belt Conference Championships appearance, it will compete against Old Dominion, James Madison, and Southern Miss. That's all for the FM88 Sports Report. For FM88 Sports, I'm John Boggess.
That concludes this edition of Newscenter88's Weekend Recap. Tune in next week for a weekly recap of the top stories around the globe and the tri-state area. And you can watch this newscast anytime on GMC TV or WMUL Radio's YouTube channels.
I'm Luke Hamilton.
And I'm Waylon Smith. Have a great week.